Yeah, thank you to the Lodge for having me. Thank you to all of you for being here. Thank you to Boundary Waters Connect for putting this together. This is really lovely. And my weekend was spent here. This is a photo from Sunday night on Gaskin Lake. And this was yesterday morning I took out of the Boundary Waters. So I am really feeling the love for this place right now. I've always felt the love, but right now I'm really jazzed on the Boundary Waters, obviously. And I go back in on Thursday for another trip. So lucky me. Yeah, my name's Matt Mikkelsen. I live in Duluth, Minnesota. I run an organization called Quiet Parks International. I'm also a sound recordist and a filmmaker, and I'll talk about all that stuff probably more than you might like. But yeah, just deep thanks for having me. I grew up in New Jersey, of all places. If anyone doesn't know where New Jersey is, you don't really need to put it on your map. It's fine. Um, and I went to school in Ithaca, New York, in the Finger Lakes region to study sound engineering for film and television. Um, During my studies at Ithaca College, I just realized I was setting myself up for a life spent in a studio, which is beautiful in its own way, but I've always really loved being outside. I didn't love the idea of just spending every day in a basement and not seeing the light of day. I'd been lucky enough to be raised going to the Adirondacks on trips, doing whitewater rafting out west. I think as a young adult, I realized that I wanted to spend my time more outside than inside and working to protect the places we have left that are really natural and beautiful and meaningful, not only for us as people, but for our natural siblings as well, our plants and our animals. And um, I was trying to find a way to connect this love I had of sound recording and music and all those technical things with my love of nature. And I heard about a man by the name of Gordon Hempton. Gordon Hempton's an acoustic ecologist. He's a sound designer, field recordist, and he has spent his career trying to record and protect what we now call the last remaining quiet places. You're going to hear me talk a lot about quiet. I'll tell you more about what quiet is. But I connected with Gordon when I was very young, and I said, hey, what you do sounds really cool. I'd love to hear more about it. And he really took me under his wing and showed me this craft of nature sound recording and acoustic ecology. And we talked a lot about why sound is really important for us as humans, for birds, for animals, and why it's a really crucial part of conservation in our wilderness areas and our national parks and all sorts of public lands that often gets overlooked. So I fell down a really deep and obscure rabbit hole of trying to find and record nature all over the world. And I've been really lucky to have a career that's taken me really all over the world. I've been to nearly every continent to record nature sounds and research soundscapes. Traveled extensively, obviously, in the United States. After going to school in central New York and then traveling out west mobile for a few years, I lived in Washington State and Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and kind of all over. I ended up in Duluth through an odd set of circumstances. I had only Googled Duluth once before I moved there. I just had no clue. And I saw a picture of the Lift Bridge and I was like, oh, that's cool. I had no clue what northern Minnesota was like. I had, oh, sure. Yeah. I've picked it up. You betcha. I landed in Duluth and immediately, like 2 days after like unloading boxes into the house that I was renting, came up to Superior National Forest to investigate this place I'd been hearing about called the Boundary Waters. In my work in researching soundscapes and trying to search for quiet, people kept mentioning this place called the Boundary Waters to me. And I realized after moving to Duluth, whoa, I'm really close. I should just drive up and see what the fuss is about. And that has deeply changed me as a person, just this place as a whole. I think if you're sitting in this room, you can agree with that sentiment that this is a place of boundless joy and exploration and beauty of all sorts of varieties. So I'm going to talk more about the Boundary Waters in a little while, but this kind of search for beautiful, pure natural soundscapes evolved in a more conservation-minded way in my world, where in 2018, I helped start an organization called Quiet Parks International. Quiet Parks International is an all-volunteer organization similar to Dark Sky International, where we're trying to preserve something that a lot of people don't know that they're missing. And our goal is to protect quiet in all of its forms. Protect it from noise pollution, protect it from noise in general. Noise can be literal and metaphorical in lots of ways. Because we really believe that when we can find and access quiet as humans, we become better humans. And we become better to each other, we become better neighbors, we become better stewards for our environments and our conservation practices. And so that's our goal, is to find quiet in all of its forms and work to protect it around the world. We believe when we can save quiet, we can save everything else. And that plays out in a lot of different ways. The question is like, what is quiet? And that is a question that I have continued to ask myself and will continue to ask myself, because it takes a lot of different forms. The Danes have a word called hygge. Hygge is a word that doesn't have a direct translation into English, but it can mean a lot of different things. And it's a feeling that you have. And you can have this feeling in lots of different places and in lots of different ways. I think quiet is really similar. We all know what it means to feel quiet. So quiet can be a feeling. Quiet is also a scientific phenomena in a few different ways. You know, you can be in a recording studio and it's silent, but you can also be out in nature and hear quiet. So when I'm talking about quiet, for the most part, what I'm talking about is a lack of noise pollution, a lack of any sort of foreign sound in an environment. So even if you're out in nature and you're hearing distant cows mooing, I would consider that noise, because those aren't supposed to be here. Sounds of native species, sounds of wind through trees, lakes lapping, those are all sounds that are endemic to a place that are supposed to be there. And all those sounds contain valuable information. So when I talk about sound, I talk about valuable information. When I talk about noise, it's invaluable information. It's sound that doesn't hold any value for us and distracts us from the important information. If you're a grouse and you are sitting on a log drumming, you have a goal in mind. You're trying to attract certain things, you're trying to detract certain things. If an airplane is flying over you and you're a drumming grouse, that's noise. That noise is interfering with your ability to communicate. If you're an owl sitting on a branch looking for a mouse in a nearby field, you're mainly using your hearing and your eyes, but any noise that's interfering with your task is noise pollution. We've all heard noise pollution. It exists all over the place. Most of us are exposed to unhealthy levels of noise all the time. So long story short, we really felt like we needed an international sort of organization to bring all of these people who are working in this big word of quiet together into one sort of umbrella. So that's what we started to do. And we really very quickly found out that even people who didn't speak the same language as us understood what quiet was and wanted to help protect quiet. So we developed a few different program areas in the nonprofit, each of which have their own kind of scientific criteria that we've developed to be able to assess the different program areas. That we have a wilderness quiet parks program, an urban quiet parks program, quiet trails, quiet conservation areas, quiet communities, quiet residences. We have a lot of different program areas, each of which allow us to kind of measure how much quiet is happening in that place and be able to award it if it meets that criteria for us. We work in a lot of different ways, but one of the ways we work is getting tips essentially from people all over the world of where their favorite quiet place is. There's a lot of them. This is a map of, I think it's actually probably from last year, but this is a map of currently all the places that we're evaluating for presence of quiet. This contains not only wilderness areas, but city parks, different sorts of communities, things like that, places that have this special feeling of quiet going on. And it's a big undertaking. I mainly focus on wilderness areas and big pieces of publicly accessible nature. So that's mainly what I'm gonna speak about now, but it would be a disservice to not mention that a lot of our work to bring access to quiet to people happens not in beautiful remote places like the Boundary Waters. It happens in Stockholm, Sweden. It happens in Taipei, Taiwan. We, as a people, everyone sitting in this room, are lucky enough to be on the edge of accessing a lot of quiet. Most of the population is not so lucky. So our goal is really to be able to show people how important quiet is by letting them access it. And what I say is, once you hear quiet, once you experience quiet, the need to save it and protect it and access it becomes very self-evident. Once you know quiet, it's hard to not live in that sort of place or access it as often as you can. So a wilderness quiet park, to get an award as a wilderness quiet park, I need to find a noise-free interval of 15 minutes or more, which doesn't sound like a lot. You'd think that 15 minutes is pretty easy to find in a national park or a wilderness area of just the sounds of nature. No airplanes, no people, no distant highway noise. And let me tell you, 15 minutes of just pure natural sound is incredibly rare. I'd say there are fewer than 10 places in North America that experience that sort of dependable noise-free interval. And I would assume not more than maybe 50 regions in the world experience that noise-free interval. It's incredibly rare. And we just feel like if we don't recognize these places now, we're going to lose the ability to get them back. And it's a resource that has gone vastly undervalued. And as our world gets noisier and noisier, I think a lot of people are starting to realize how valuable quiet really is. So the nuts and bolts of how I kind of find out if a place is quiet is I set up really high sensitivity microphone systems, usually throughout an area or in, I kind of strategically plot places on a map and collect data. That data collection can vary based on place, but it usually happens, I need to do at least 3 days in a week, and 3 hours in a day. Usually that day happens early, before sunrise, for a few reasons. One is that sound travels most effectively before the sun rises and before the wind picks up and the atmosphere heats up. And the other is that that's the most magnificent time of day to listen to nature. So it's a little self-serving in that way. We like to try and find places that are far away from streams or waterfalls or any sort of natural sound that's consistent. We talk about acoustic horizon, which is like how far you can hear. When you're standing next to a waterfall, your acoustic horizon is pretty small. If you're standing away from those things, you end up hearing what's happening around you for a lot larger of a radius. So we try and set up our testing equipment far away from that stuff. And then another important part of the data collection is, yes, there's like this hard data I'm collecting, information about noise pollution events, the noise-free intervals. There's also this indescript feeling of quiet that you can have. And so a big part of our process is making sure that our volunteers who are collecting data are equipped to just write down, what are they noticing? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? I think it's possible to hold like hard scientific data in one hand and the feelings you're having in another, and like give them both semi-equal weight in order to let people know that, yeah, this is what quiet is. This is a quiet area. The Boundary Waters is a wilderness quiet, and passes with flying colors in a way that almost every other place I've been to in the world does not. And I'll talk more about that in a little while. But the question is like, why is the world so noisy and how has it become so noisy? There's a lot of reasons, but just to give a sense of how hard it is to get away from noise is a few stats that are kind of staggering, in that there's like nearly 10 billion airline passengers every year. That was last year. When I first started doing these presentations, the number was closer to like 3.5 billion people. So we're seeing exponential increase in air traffic, and the number of people traveling via air. Commercial air traffic is kind of one of the biggest noise pollution sources in our wilderness areas and our national parks. When you go out to the ocean, you don't find much relief either. Shipping traffic is also exponentially increasing. I tell people to get a sense of really how much noise there is in the air and on the sea, or in our rivers and our lakes at any given time, pull up a live flight tracking app or website, which are free to use. And it is astounding how many planes are in the sky at any given time, how many ships are in our seas and in our lakes and rivers at any given time. It's really hard to find quiet. It's becoming harder and harder. Why is noise really that bad for us is also a question we've been unraveling for the past few decades. Noise has been proven to be just really bad for us in a lot of different ways. Cardiovascularly, it has side effects for us or correlations. It diminishes our mental health as well, increases our stress hormones. Children who are affected by noise and experience high levels of noise also experience negative side effects. We didn't evolve to be subjected to this level of noise on a daily basis the way that we are right now. So it's just not good for our bodies. And the remedy for all those bad side effects is access to quiet. When you're in a quiet place, your stress hormones decrease, your heart rate lowers, you feel calm, but your body is also becoming calm when you're in a quiet place. So we really feel like by giving people access to quiet, we can not only make them healthier physically, but we can also help with a lot of the mental side effects of being subjected to noise as well. It's really you can also look at this from a very ecological perspective, which I often do. So noise really impacts nature, probably even in more acute ways than we even know. But nature is busy communicating the same way we are. And when nature is subjected to noise, it diminishes their ability to communicate effectively. When birds are calling or singing, they're not just doing that so we can appreciate their song. They have some really specific goals in mind that they're trying to accomplish. Noise really impacts nature's ability to thrive. And what we've found through studying soundscapes is that when we find places with healthy, intact soundscapes, usually other parts of those ecosystems are also pretty intact. When I find places that are free from noise pollution, they're often free from all sorts of other types of pollution as well. So it's a really good general indicator for the health of an ecosystem, what it sounds like. Through this data, I've also partnered with people to do species counts and biodiversity studies. You can study land usage and impact from land usage. You can do a lot with sound, which is really interesting. And sound isn't as intensive as like setting up a trail camera. Sound technology is being used in a lot of different ways to study our environments and how we move through them, but also how nature utilizes the soundscape. I have talked a lot. I feel like I've got some cool sounds and I figured you might want to hear some of them. So I put together some soundscapes from places I've recorded around the world. And I'll play some of those for you and then I'll talk about them and we'll kind of go from there. First place that I'll play is from the Amazon jungle in Ecuador. My ecological knowledge of the Amazon River Basin isn't super great, but I call those popcorn frogs. Thought it was a good name for them. This is a great example of how quiet places aren't silent. Quiet and silence are two very different things. The Amazon jungle in Ecuador, where I recorded, had hours worth of noise-free intervals. I barely heard much noise pollution when I was there at all, but it was so loud, it was like hard to sleep. It was incredibly full of all sorts of frogs and insects. And when I analyze my recordings from that place, I can see on a visualization all the different bands of insects happening. All the different frogs have their own space in the spectral kind of layout. Bernie Krause calls it the Great Animal Orchestra. And when you look at a sound recording of a place like this, you can see each species occupies its own space on the frequency spectrum. They're not evolved to vocalize or make noise in the same frequencies. They all have their own individual place, which is very cool. A loud place that is very quiet. Yes. Oh, please fiddle. Fiddle away. The plop, 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 plop. Those are the frogs. Yeah. And I was as surprised to hear them as you are right now. I was like, what is that sound? It's crazy. Yeah, we were there it was July of 2022. And they had a very wet few weeks, which I don't know what that means in the Amazon. I just assume it's like that all the time. But apparently I heard from the tribe we were working with, the Kofan people, that it had been a very wet July. And the kind of monsoon was happening earlier than usual. And so all of these kind of basins in the jungle had filled up with water. That made it very difficult to navigate, but the frogs every night just erupted. And it was like almost you had to wear earplugs. A similar experience I've had here when the spring peepers come out and their peak, you know, they're at their peak and you want to go outside for a nice walk and it's like, oh my God. Very similar, very similar experience. This next sound is a little scarier. I'm not gonna tell you what it is, but someone might know once you hear it. Oh wait, we did that one, okay. This is from Costa Rica. I was there 2 years ago. They're kind of funny to listen to here. Imagine sleeping and then you wake up to that sound, which is what happened to me. And I knew they were howler monkeys, but it was still like very spooky. I had done a few-week trip to Costa Rica for kind of sound recording and soundscape ecology work in not this past December, but the December before. And we would hear distant howler monkeys all the time. And it kind of became like a running joke in our group of weird sound nerds that like someone had to get a really good close recording of these howler monkeys. And the last night we were there, I was just like really tired. A lot of this work is like about not sleeping and not eating and really tearing your body up and carrying heavy equipment. And I was like, I'm not going to go after this. So I just set my microphones up just like a little bit away from my tent, just to have something overnight. And they were just sitting right in the tree above the microphone. Lucky me, I gave up and they rewarded me, which is a great life lesson that if you like let go of whatever you're holding on to, sometimes things just happen and it's magical. Okay, those are far away sounds. I now want to talk about sounds that are closer to us and maybe more recognizable to a lot of us. For some more background, I had mentioned a little earlier that when I first moved to Duluth, it was 2021, sight unseen, Didn't know anything about Duluth or northern Minnesota other than I'd heard it was cool. Um, and I immediately drove up through Finland and just started driving back there on these roads. And I was like, oh, there's a lake here. Oh, there's a lake here. There's a lot of lakes. And I ended up just kind of camping for about just car camping for about like 2 weeks up in the Finland area. And of course, I made it really far north to like the Kawishwi area and a little bit east and a little bit west, just kind of like plotting the border of the wilderness area of the Boundary Waters. And I just immediately really fell in love with the soundscapes here. And even after my first evening spent in the woods up here, I knew it would qualify for a wilderness quiet park. It was that apparent to me, which never happens. It usually takes me weeks of like computer research to look at flight patterns and noise pollution maps and road traffic maps before I'm even confident enough to go to a place. And then when I go to a place, I usually spend between 2 and 3 weeks just exploring it, trying to find these kind of nooks and crannies that might be quiet. I just happened up on a random lake in Superior National Forest and was smacked in the face with like some of the most profound and prolific quiet experiences that I've ever had in my life. So this was, I believe this is a recording from my first evening ever camping up here in Superior National Forest. So that was like my first night in Minnesota, essentially, living here. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. As a sound person and someone who studies soundscapes, but also just like I study acoustics. Just a big old sound nerd. I love sound in all of its forms. I love music. I love studying how sound waves move through environments. The really cool thing about loons that people don't often think about, even people who have heard loons their whole life, is that when a loon calls in a scenario like this, not only do you hear that beautiful wail or the alarm calls or the flapping, anything like that, but the sound for the loon travels throughout the body of the lake. And what I say is like loons are really good at illuminating the topography of an area without having to see it. So you can hear after the loon's done calling the echo for a ton of time. And you can tell just from, you could play me a recording of a loon and I could tell you, oh, that's a small lake. That's a big lake. That's a lake with a lot of boulders on it. The way that sound moves through an environment can tell you a lot about what that environment contains. So I recorded a lot of loons over those few weeks, and it never got old. Like every night I almost couldn't sleep because I was just like waiting for them to start. And once they started, like I just couldn't stop. It was just like one of the most magical sounds I think that exists on the planet. It's just so beautiful. It's so emotionally evocative. It's nostalgic. It's like all these things that sound can do for us, I feel like are really contained in a loon call. And so I have spent probably at this point months of my life camping, whether I'm on a canoe or in a car or backpacking in this beautiful part of the world, just sitting there kind of waiting for more loons. This is a place that offers just like endless appreciation and opportunities for endless appreciation of the place that we live. And like I said, I've lived all over the US. I've been lucky to travel all over the world. The thing that I think makes northern Minnesota in particular so unique is that I feel that with everyone who loves this place, is that we all are like so excited to just be here and just to experience the place. And I have always felt really welcome here. So thank you for letting me appreciate your loons. And I'll do everything I can to work to protect them. And I think we all need to do everything we can do to work to protect this place, whether it's like technical wilderness boundary or the Superior National Forest or the Big Lake, or this is a very connected ecosystem. And all of our wilderness areas, our national parks, state parks are experiencing a higher level of threats than they ever have before. So this is like a great time to be talking about how much we love these places and how much we care about them and how much we want to protect them, which is just like a big plug for orgs like Boundary Waters Connect and Save the Boundary Waters and all these really wonderful organizations that are doing this crucial work so we can have this type of experience. And like I said, I was out this weekend, 2 days ago. No, yesterday I took out of the Boundary Waters. Yesterday morning, and I heard over the weekend, it was only a 2-night trip. I heard a total of like 6 airplanes, which is nothing. It's like not a lot at all in terms of the scale that it could be. And I didn't see another person the whole trip. Like for 3 days straight, it was just me and the 4 other people I was with. And it was just us out there. And it wasn't like we were super far away. We hadn't like done anything crazy to get there, but we living in this area or visiting this area have just unprecedented access to these really, really special environments. And I know you are here because that's probably something that you also feel. I'll wrap up with one more sound and a quote. This is from my mentor who says, "Silence is not the absence of anything, but the presence of everything." I'll read the full quote because I think you all will appreciate it. He says, "It is the presence of time undisturbed. It can be felt within the chest. Silence nurtures our nature, our human nature, and lets us know who we are. Left with a more receptive mind and a more attuned ear, we become better listeners not only to nature, but to each other. Silence can be carried like embers from a fire. Silence can be found, and silence can find you. Silence can be lost and also recovered, but silence cannot be imagined, although most people think so. To experience the soul-welling wonder of silence, you must hear it." So my call to action for all of you is to start, if you haven't, or continue to listen, not only to the place, to each other, to your neighbors, to your family. I think the more we listen as people, the happier we become and the better people we are. So this last sound recording is from Cowishiwi Lake, right on the edge of the Boundary Waters. And I was there alone somehow in May. And there were these really brief rainstorms that were coming, these really gentle, beautiful, kind of soothing rains, not the ones that make you regret going into the Boundary Waters, just like these really pleasant ones, which we don't get all the time. Thank you everyone so much for coming. My email's here if anyone wants to reach out and talk more. I know we have questions and answers coming up, but just really appreciate you all being here and spending your afternoon with me. So thank you so much.